Hello everyone and welcome to the next part in our modeling our character Sven in Maya. In this one we're going to focus on picking up where we left off, and we're going to talk about doing the legs and the boots. And again, I have Craig Barr with us, a technical specialist at Autodesk, and we want to welcome him again to this video.
Hello again, Chris.
So we're going to, talk about the same theme, right? We talked about keeping things simple, and so we're going to do the same thing in our edge flow. Now, what I'm doing here is, this is just my choice. I could have brought that all the way down to the ankle, but what's easier for me at this point is just extruding each individual section here. And also you'll notice, Greg, and this will be good to get your input on this, see how I'm straightening the edges out? That even makes it a little bit easier to control.
Absolutely. So what you're doing there is great for quickly blocking in, building up a mesh here, and then you're adjusting your edge loops as you go to kind of scale to your image plane there, your reference image, and that's great. And then keeping, as you said, you were keeping your edge loops straight for the time being, just to be able to manage. And that's a great idea for roughing in this mesh like you're doing right now on the leg. Yeah, definitely keeping them straight to kind of manage them. As you go on and start to get more detail, of course, into the mesh, you'll start to break up those loops a bit to fit more towards the anatomical structure of the character. But what you've got going on here is definitely a great way to start blocking in form.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you mentioned was taking things to, a subdivision level, right? And, you've been working on Mudbox for a long time, and so you have a lot of experience around that. What type of thing, we're headed in a good direction here. Is there anything else that you would like the students and others to know, to take into consideration about their model with preparing it to go to Mudbox? Because actually that's what we're going to do, because we're going to paint our textures in Mudbox downstream.
Right. So a couple considerations there. Again, we touched on a little bit of, in the last video there, we talked about the importance of keeping clean topology. And that carries through into any package that relies heavily on subdivision. For example, Mudbox. Anything that subdivides is going to, doesn't matter what package it is, subdivision works off the same principle across any package. The cleaner the mesh, the better the subdivision you're going to get. And what I mean by a clean mesh is you're using all quads here, and that's fantastic. That's going to subdivide nice and clean. If you keep your edge flow going, your edges spaced out, somewhat uniform throughout the model, you're going to get nice clean subdivision there across the surface, which is going to allow for continuity in your sculpting. As well, I'm not sure if you're going to be touching on UV layout, but the cool thing with our pipeline here with our Autodesk tools is that you don't necessarily need to worry about UVs right off the bat anymore. You used to for your texturing. You don't necessarily need to worry about that at all now right off the bat. In working with Mudbox, you can come back after you've done your sculpting and even your painting, because we have a UV-less workflow in Mudbox. So you can come back and address those issues back in Maya when you need them, or if you require UVs. Depending on what your production pipeline is.
And actually, I'm really glad you talked about UVs, because we are going to be talking about how UVs play into our character, and where we're going to focus on that is how Max and Maya can actually really streamline that workflow, and that's using the Entertainment Creation Suite. Interesting tool I use there, it maybe not a lot of people know, is that fill hole tool. So I just needed to fill the bottom of my foot, picked that whole edge loop and did a fill, and then I just sectioned up my, I split the rest of the vertices across as much as I can. I know I have a quad on the back there, and I can go back and fix that later, but you can see how quickly, I was able to model in this boot, and we're getting closer and closer to where we can then go back and start adding in all the rest of our edge loops so that we can finish our character and start moving towards texturing and animation. And as I start doing that next section of adding in the extra detail, that's also where I'm going to start looking at, how this character is going to deform. And so, Craig, we thank you for being part of this. And Craig's going to be back in some of our future videos coming up. And check out our blog and download the free software at the students.autodesk.com. We'll see everybody in the next video.